Mist rolled over the cracked, dry soil of Willow Creek Farm as dawn broke. Rows of withered crops stretched toward a crumbling wooden fence, and a rusted tractor sat abandoned, half swallowed by weeds. Claire Mason, 32 years old, her sleeves rolled up and her boots caked in mud, walked the dead rows with a notebook in hand. She knelt down, rubbed the soil between her fingers, and sighed. "Come on," she whispered to herself. "Give me something." But she found nothing except dust. Later that morning she walked into town, past storefronts, the grain co-op, and the local diner, ignoring the stares and whispers that followed her. Two farmers leaned against a fence post, watching her pass. "That's the Mason girl," one said. "Still trying to save that dead farm." The other shook his head. 3 years running now. Bank's gonna take it before the frost does." Claire heard every word, but she kept walking, her jaw tight. Inside the Willow Creek Bank, she sat across from Dean Hollis, the manager, a stiff man in his 50s with a cold smile. "Ms. Mason, your loan payment is 90 days late." "Again," he said. Claire told him she knew, but that she needed one more season, one good harvest to catch up on everything. Dean reminded her she had said the same thing the year before, and the year before that. Claire explained she had been testing the north field with a new soil treatment, that this year would be different. Dean leaned back unmoved. "Claire, that farm has failed every year since your father passed. People don't invest in dead ground." She insisted it wasn't dead, only neglected, and that there was a difference. Dean stood, ending the meeting. 60 days. After that, foreclosure proceedings begin." Claire gathered her folder and kept her composure until she was out the door. Outside, she leaned against the wall and exhaled sharply. Her phone buzzed with a text from her brother Ryan. "Sell the farm. Take the money. Move on already." She pocketed the phone without replying. Back at the farm, she found her elderly neighbor, Abel Wren, leaning on the fence, watching her fields. "Your daddy used to talk to this soil like it was a person," he said. "Said it remembered kindness." Claire replied bitterly that it had forgotten, or maybe she had. Abel asked if she had ever tried the north field, down by the creek bend, saying her father always claimed that patch had something different about it, though he never got around to using it properly. Claire's eyes lit up slightly as she remembered her father mentioning it once, saying the soil there drained differently and held water longer during dry months. Abel suggested it might be worth a look before the bank forgot she existed. Claire made her way to the overgrown and used section of the farm near the creek. She dug into the earth and examined dark, rich soil that stood in stark contrast to the rest of the farm. "This is good," she said, surprised. "This is really good." She took samples, her mind racing with possibility. In the weeks that followed, Claire worked tirelessly, tilling the soil, planting a rare heirloom grain variety she researched online, and building irrigation from scavenged parts. Late one night, she pored over soil science articles, the glow of her laptop the only light in the farmhouse. The next day she stood at a pawn shop counter, sliding her mother's ring across the glass for seed money, her face unreadable. A second bank turned her down flat, the loan officer barely looking up from his desk. Undeterred, she built a makeshift greenhouse frame alone in the pouring rain, hammering boards together as thunder rolled overhead. At the town diner, exhausted, she sat alone nursing a coffee when her brother Ryan walked in and sat across from her uninvited. He had heard she was planting something new, that she had spent their mother's ring money on seeds. "It's an investment," she said flatly. He called it denial, reminding her that their father couldn't save the farm even with 30 more years of experience than she had. Claire countered that their father never tried the north field properly, that she had found his notes, that he knew something was different about that soil. Ryan shook his head, calling it a dead man's guess. "Maybe," Claire said. "Or maybe I'm finishing what he started." Ryan stood, tossed a few bills on the table, and warned her she had 60 days before it wasn't her choice anymore. He left, and Claire stared at her coffee, unshaken but visibly tired. Weeks later, green shoots broke through the soil of the north field, thin and fragile but alive. Claire dropped to her knees, running her hands over the sprouts, laughing through tears. "There you are," she said softly. Abel visited again, impressed by the growth, asking what kind of grain it was, since he had never seen anything like it around those parts. Claire explained it was an old heirloom variety, rare and drought-resistant, worth triple the price of regular grain if grown right. Abel asked if she believed the soil was the key. "I know it is," she said. "It's already proving it." Claire returned to the bank, presenting Dean with photographs of the thriving crop, asking for 30 more days. Dean remained unimpressed, saying green shoots didn't pay debts, that he needed a harvest, not hope. Claire promised he would get one, that she was only asking for a fair chance. Reluctantly, he agreed to a final 30-day extension. Then came the storm. A violent downpour rolled in, and Claire raced into the field, desperately covering the young plants with tarps, fighting the wind and rain. Abel arrived with extra hands from town, quiet neighbors who had once doubted her, now helping without a word. Over the howling wind, Claire shouted, asking Abel why he was helping her. Grinning through the rain, he shouted back that her father had helped half the town when times were hard, and it was time they returned the favor. Together they saved the crop, and dawn broke over a battered but surviving field. Weeks later, the field had transformed into golden stalks swaying in the breeze, healthy and abundant. Claire walked through it awestruck. A grain buyer named Margot Pierce arrived unannounced, having heard rumors of the rare crop growing out by the creek. She admitted she hadn't believed it until she saw it with her own eyes. Claire told her it would be ready for harvest within the week. Examining a stalk closely, Margot explained that specialty markets, artisan bakeries, and export buyers were all starving for grain of this quality, and that she was prepared to make an offer that could change Claire's life. On harvest day, the whole town gathered, drawn by curiosity and rumor. Combines borrowed from neighbors moved through the golden field as Claire directed the harvest, radiant with focus and joy. Ryan arrived and stood stunned into silence at the sight of the abundant crop. "This is real," he said quietly. "It was always real," Claire replied. "You just didn't believe it." At the grain co-op's weighing station, bags of harvested grain were weighed and recorded, the numbers climbing far beyond anyone's expectations. Margot reviewed the final tally, visibly impressed, and announced that the yield, combined with the rarity and quality of the grain, put the harvest's value north of $500,000, possibly more once export contracts were finalized. Gasps rippled through the gathered crowd. Claire steadied herself against a grain cart, overwhelmed, barely able to repeat the number aloud. Margot added that every specialty buyer in 3 states would want next season's crop reserved, that Claire was now sitting on the most valuable acre in the county. Claire returned to the bank and calmly placed a certified check on Dean's desk, covering the full debt with a hefty surplus. Stunned, Dean noted it was more than the balance owed. Claire told him to consider the rest a deposit, since she would be expanding the north field the following season and would need proper financing, this time on her own terms. Humbled, Dean nodded slowly and agreed. Walking down the same street where she had once been whispered about, Claire was now greeted with respect, nods, smiles, and congratulatory handshakes. The same 2 farmers from before watched her pass again. "Guess we were wrong about the Mason girl," one admitted. "Yes, we were," the other agreed. As the sun set over the now bare, harvested north field, Claire stood alone holding her father's journal. Abel joined her quietly, telling her that her father would be real proud. Smiling, her eyes glistening, Claire said he already knew, that he had simply run out of time to prove it. "Well," Abel said, "you proved it for him." Claire looked out over the field, no longer barren, no longer a failure, but the foundation of everything to come. "This isn't the end of the story," she said, her voice steady and hopeful. "It's just the first good harvest." She tucked the journal under her arm and walked toward the farmhouse as the sun set golden over the transformed land. The end.